She slammed her hand on the table, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You're the most useless child we have." Everyone laughed, nodding, as if my existence was a burden. But what none of them knew was that I'd been funding this family for years. I was the Bank of Jessica, and that night, I closed my doors forever. The clinking of silverware echoed in the dining room, a room that always felt more like a courtroom than a place for family meals. The chandelier above glowed warm, but the atmosphere was anything but. My siblings laughed loudly, retelling stories from their day. Dad muttered about work. And Mom, well, Mom sat at the head of the table, watching everything like a queen guarding her throne. I stayed quiet, eating slowly, trying not to draw attention. It never mattered. In this family, silence wasn't protection. It was a target. Mom's eyes cut toward me, sharp as knives. "Jessica," she said, her voice already heavy with disdain, "do you even contribute anything to this family?" The laughter died down. Everyone turned to look at me. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. I opened my lips, but before I could speak, she slammed her hand against the table. Plates rattled. Her words dropped like a guillotine. "You're the most useless child we have." Silence. Then, laughter. My brother snickered, covering his mouth. My sister shook her head, smirking. Even Dad smirked into his glass, not bothering to defend me. The words stung, even though they shouldn't have surprised me. Mom had said cruel things before, but never this sharp, never this final. "Useless," she repeated, leaning back in her chair like a judge passing sentence. "At least your brother is successful. At least your sister makes us proud. What about you? You're nothing but dead weight." I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening around the fork. My chest burned, but I forced a smile. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I laughed. Soft at first, then louder. The table went quiet again, my family staring at me like I'd lost my mind. "Funny," I said, finally setting the fork down. "Because if I'm so useless, I wonder who's been paying for your bills. Your rent. Your tuition. Your emergencies." Their smirks faltered. I leaned forward, my voice steady. "You've been running on the Bank of Jessica for years. But tonight..." I let the pause linger, the fire rising in my chest. Those doors close. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's smug expression cracked, just slightly. My siblings exchanged uneasy glances. For the first time I saw it, the fear. And deep down I knew. This was only the beginning. The silence after my words hung thick, but my mind had already drifted back to years of being the outsider in my own home. From the beginning, the script was clear. My siblings were the stars, and I was the afterthought. When my brother Daniel made the soccer team, Mom and Dad bought him new cleats, organized a family barbecue to celebrate, and told the whole neighborhood. When my sister Chloe got the lead in the school play, Dad rented a video camera just to record every performance. And me? When I came home with straight A's and a scholarship acceptance letter, Mom didn't even look up from her magazine. "Don't act like you're special," she muttered. "Your sister already got better offers." That was the rhythm of my childhood, every achievement of mine dismissed, every mistake magnified. My brother could crash Dad's car and be excused as young and reckless. My sister could max out credit cards, and Dad would sigh, "She'll learn." But if I asked for bus fare, I was a burden. Somewhere along the way, I became more than just the ignored child. I became their safety net. It started small. Daniel needed money for gas. I lent him $20 from my part-time job at the bookstore. Chloe needed new shoes for prom. I dipped into my babysitting savings. Dad said he was short on the electricity bill one month, and I handed over my entire paycheck without hesitation. Each time, they promised it was temporary. Each time they said, "We'll pay you back." But the money never came back. And the requests only grew. By the time I graduated college, I was working 2 jobs. Not for myself, but to keep them afloat. Daniel's car payments. Chloe's rent. Dad's medical bills. Mom's emergencies. They joked about it sometimes. "Why worry?" Daniel would laugh. "The Bank of Jessica always comes through." Everyone laughed. Everyone but me. Because behind their jokes was an ugly truth. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a resource. A lifeline. An account they could drain whenever life got tough. And the cruelest part? They still treated me like I was nothing. Useless. Mom had called me tonight. After years of carrying them, after sacrificing my own dreams, my own savings, my own peace, still useless. But as I sat at that table, their laughter echoing, I realized something. They'd taken me for granted for the last time. The Bank of Jessica was closing. And the debt they owed me wasn't just financial. It was years of neglect, humiliation, and silence. And tonight, I was collecting. People like to say money can't buy love, but in my family, money was the only thing that kept me tethered to them. Without it, I would have been discarded long ago. I remember my first real job out of college. It wasn't glamorous. I worked long shifts at a marketing firm, grinding late into the night. My paycheck wasn't huge, but it was steady. I should have been saving for my future, paying off student loans, maybe traveling for once in my life. But my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Daniel needed help covering the down payment for his new car. Just a loan, Jess. I'll pay you back in a month. He never did. Chloe's landlord was threatening eviction. Jess, please. You're the only one I can count on. I sent the money, even though it meant eating ramen noodles for the rest of the month. Mom called one winter evening, her voice urgent. Your father's medical insurance didn't cover the hospital bill. If you don't help, they'll send us to collections. I wired the money immediately, my chest tight. Every time, it was framed as a one-time emergency. Every time they swore gratitude. And yet, not once did they truly thank me. Instead, it became expected. Normal. I was no longer Jessica, the daughter or the sister. I was Jessica, the bank account. Holidays made it worse. While other families exchanged gifts, mine exchanged bills, with my name scribbled at the bottom. Jessica will cover it, they'd say casually, laughing as if it were a family tradition. And me? I played along. I smiled tightly. I handed over the money. Because deep down, I thought that maybe, just maybe, if I kept giving, I'd finally earn their love. But the love never came. When Daniel strutted around in designer sneakers I'd unknowingly paid for, Mom bragged about his success. When Chloe flaunted vacations I'd quietly funded, Dad beamed with pride at her independence. And me? I sat in the background, invisible, broke, exhausted. Until tonight. As Mom called me useless in front of everyone, a strange clarity hit me. I wasn't just their scapegoat. I was their provider. The roof over their heads, the gas in their cars, the lights in their house. All of it had come from me. Without the Bank of Jessica, their shiny world would collapse. And I decided once and for all to let it. It was Chloe who finally broke me. She strolled into Sunday dinner wearing a glittering diamond necklace. Mom gasped, reaching out to touch it. Oh, Chloe, you look stunning. Your taste is exquisite. Chloe smiled smugly. Well, you know me. I deserve the finer things. I knew the truth. That necklace hadn't come from her paycheck. It came from the emergency loan she begged from me last month, claiming her rent was overdue. My chest tightened as I watched Mom beam with pride, oblivious, or worse willfully blind, to where the money had really come from. Then Daniel leaned back in his chair, showing off photos of his weekend trip to Vegas. All expenses paid, he bragged. Best time of my life. I stared at him in disbelief. Only 2 weeks ago, he'd sworn he couldn't cover his mortgage. I had written the check myself. And still, Mom turned to me, frowning. Jessica, look at your siblings. Why can't you be more like them? Why can't you make us proud for once? The words hit me like a final nail being hammered into a coffin. Proud? Of Chloe's lies? Of Daniel's waste? And yet I, who carried their weight, was useless? I smiled faintly, pushing back from the table. My decision crystallized right then. They thought the Bank of Jessica would never close. But every bank has its limit. And I was done. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to fund their comfort. I was going to fund my freedom. And when I walked away, they'd finally realize just how fragile their world was without me. It didn't take long for the next emergency to arrive. Daniel showed up at my apartment one evening, pacing the living room with his phone in his hand. Jess, I need 10 grand. Just a short-term loan. My car's in the shop, And if I don't get it fixed, I can't get to work. Once upon a time, I would have said yes instantly, even if it meant draining my savings. But this time, I didn't even flinch. No, I said simply. He stopped pacing, blinking at me. What do you mean, no? You're Jessica. You always help. I stood, arms crossed. Not anymore. You've treated me like a bank account, not a sister. The Bank of Jessica is closed. His face flushed red. You're being selfish. You know I'll pay you back. I laughed, sharp and cold. Will you? Like the time you borrowed for your mortgage and used it on Vegas? Or the time you needed money for bills and bought a new phone? You never pay me back, Daniel. You just take. Before he could argue further, Mom's voice crackled over the speakerphone. Daniel had clearly called her before coming. Jessica, she snapped. Don't be dramatic. Help your brother. That's what family is for. I clenched my jaw. Funny. Because when I needed family, when I needed love, support, or even a kind word, you gave me nothing. Nothing but insults. Remember, Mom? You called me useless. Well, if I'm useless, then don't expect me to fund your lives anymore. Silence. Then Mom's voice, brittle with rage. You'll regret this. But I only smiled. For the first time in years, I felt lighter. Stronger. Because the Bank of Jessica had finally closed its doors. They cornered me the following weekend at Mom's house. Chloe, Daniel, and even Dad were there, their faces twisted with frustration. Mom stood at the head of the room like a prosecutor, arms folded. You embarrassed this family, she hissed. Daniel told me you refused him. After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us. All you've done for me? I repeated, laughing bitterly. Do you even realize what I have done for you? Mom's glare sharpened. Don't twist this, Jessica. You've always taken more than you've given. That was it. The dam broke. I pulled a folder from my bag and dropped it onto the coffee table. Paper spilled across the wood. Bank transfers, receipts, loan statements. Their eyes widened as the numbers jumped off the page. Rent for Chloe. 8 months in a row. I tapped one stack. Daniel's car down payment. Dad's hospital bills. Mom's credit card. Emergency. Every single time you called me crying, desperate, begging. And every single time I came through. Chloe's lips parted. That's exaggerated. I shoved another paper toward her. Is it? Because this is the receipt for the necklace you're wearing. You told me it was for rent. And you, I turned to Daniel, slapping down a casino withdrawal slip. You begged for mortgage money, then blew it in Vegas. Daniel's face went pale. Mom's voice wavered. You kept track? Like we're strangers. I stared at her, fury boiling in my chest. Strangers treat me better than you do. At least strangers say thank you. The room went quiet except for the shuffle of papers. My family, the people who had laughed at me, called me useless, drained me dry. They were finally seeing the truth in black and white. Do you know the total? I asked softly. Do you know how much I've given over the years? No one spoke. I let the silence stretch before answering. $126,000. That's how much the useless child has provided. That's how much the Bank of Jessica has covered while you called me worthless. Dad's jaw dropped. Chloe's eyes brimmed with tears. Daniel buried his face in his hands. But Mom. Mom just stood there, shaking her head, refusing to accept it. You did it because you wanted to. Nobody forced you. I felt a strange calm wash over me. You're right. Nobody forced me. I did it because I thought one day you'd love me for it. But now I know better. I gathered the papers back into the folder. And that's why it ends tonight. No more loans. No more rescues. No more sacrifices. The Bank of Jessica is closed. Permanently. Their silence was louder than any scream. And for the first time, I wasn't the powerless one in the room. The papers lay scattered across the coffee table like evidence at a crime scene. My family, once so loud, so sure, so smug, sat in silence. Their empire of entitlement had crumbled in minutes, and the weight of their debt hung in the air like smoke. Daniel was the first to speak, his voice breaking. Jess. I didn't realize it was that much. I thought you'd always be there. Chloe nodded quickly, tears streaking her mascara. We were stupid, okay? But you can't just cut us off. We need you. I almost laughed. That's the problem. You only need me. Never once did you want me. Never once did you treat me like a sister or a daughter. Just a vault you could raid whenever life got inconvenient. Dad leaned forward, his tone sharp. Jessica, family doesn't abandon family. You're making a mistake. I met his eyes, calm and steady. No. Family abandoned me years ago. Every insult, every dismissal, every time you called me a disappointment while holding out your hand for money. You abandoned me then. Tonight, I'm just returning the favor. Mom's face twisted, her pride still clinging to her like armor. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back when you realize you're alone. I stood, gathering the folder under my arm. My heart raced, but my voice was steady. No, Mom. I regret wasting years thinking love could be bought with sacrifice. I regret letting you treat me like a resource instead of a person. But crawling back? Never again. I walked to the door. Each step felt like shedding chains. Their voices followed me. Pleas, protests, empty threats, but I didn't turn back. At the doorway, I paused, looking over my shoulder one last time. The Bank of Jessica is officially closed. And unlike the loans I gave you, this decision isn't negotiable. Their faces blurred behind my tears. Daniel hollow, Chloe ashamed, Dad furious, Mom trembling with rage. But I didn't waver. I opened the door, and the cool night air rushed in, washing over me like freedom. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the desperate daughter begging to be seen. I was the one holding the power. As I stepped outside, I realized something profound. I had spent years funding their lives, hoping it would buy me a place in their hearts. But closing the bank wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The beginning of my life, on my terms, without the weight of their greed pressing me down. Behind me, their world was collapsing. Ahead of me, mine was just beginning. And with every step away from that house, I felt lighter. Stronger. No longer useless. No longer their bank. I was Jessica. Finally free.